because you are paying the bill, immediately I finish treating her, you come into my office and ask, doctor, what did my house help have? I will not tell you. It is none of your business. It is such that I cannot tell my patient spouse that my patient has HIV because it would be against medical ethics. So, when we are told by WHO we are not safe until we are all safe, is this factual or nonsense? That unless we are all vaccinated, we are not safe. And therefore, everybody must be vaccinated for us to be safe. Is this factual or nonsense? Let us explore it together. Remember that the enemy is the infecting agent or the virus. It is not the person who is afflicted. So as a doctor, my problem is not the sick patient, it is what is causing sickness. It is the virus that is a problem. And then, if a vaccine is effective and the recipient is protected from the disease, they have no reason to fear the unvaccinated. Does that make sense? If I take the vaccine and I am protected, why should I care if you don't take it? Are we still together? It is very important that we are together. Now, if both the unvaccinated and the vaccinated persons can still get infected, it is the ineffective vaccine that is to blame, not the unvaccinated person. So if the vaccine doesn't work and those who have been injected are still getting sick, don't blame those who haven't been vaccinated. The problem is that whatever you took did not work. Then, if you understand this, then what was the sense in preventing the unvaccinated, who had freely exercised their autonomy, as did those who got vaccinated, from accessing workplaces and traveling? Why is it your government said that if you're not vaccinated, don't go to work? Now, why were vaccines passports considered necessary when vaccination is a free choice? If I'm within my own country and you tell me I can't travel from this town to this town unless I show you some vaccine certificate, why would that be necessary if the choice is mine? Why do I have to show you any evidence of my medical information? Now, the only role those restrictions of the unvaccinated played was, and to demand the vaccine passports, was to coerce people into taking the vaccine. It is the only reason why those certificates were asked, and it's the only reason why those who are not vaccinated basis. Now, honorable members, that is a commercial exercise to push the vaccine. It is not a medical practice. So now that we have concluded with vaccine mandates, can we look at reproductive health and rights, which is an ideology? It is an ideology. Now, can children give consent for sex? Can you teach children to make decisions about sex? Now, the brain is the last organ to mature in the human body. And every time it matures, the baby is able to do something new. So your baby sits at 6 months because some part of the brain has matured. Then your baby is able to walk at 1 year because another part of the brain has matured. By the time they are 2, they learn to speak because another part of the brain has matured. By the time they are teenagers, the part that controls our sexuality has matured. And a 14 or 15-year-old person, child, is fully sexually mature and can actually get babies. So a 14-year-old boy can actually make a 30-year-old woman pregnant. because they are fully sexually mature. But there is a problem because the part of the brain that is called the frontal cortex, the part of the brain that helps us to reason and make good choices, ladies and gentlemen, does not mature until 21 to 24 years of age. So anyone who is below the age of 21 does not have the mental capacity to make some very serious choices, including sexual choices. And this is a medical fact. The age of 21 used to be the age of majority until the Americans went to war and needed to recruit more people for the war, and they reduced the age of majority to 18. And they got more young people to go to war. And when they came back, and it was the year of voting, they were told they cannot vote because they are still children, they are below the age of 21. And there was a big crisis because you are telling us we are old enough to go and die for the country, but you're telling us we are not old enough to vote. And that is how the age of majority was brought down to 18. It is a political decision, it is not a medical decision. So when you go to 14-year-olds and teach them how to use condoms and teach them how to choose whether to use a pill or to use something else, that is child abuse. You cannot talk about children marriage. It is a child who is being molested. And what you're doing is facilitating the molestation, only worrying that they don't get pregnant so long as they are molested without getting pregnant. Now, sexual maturity comes 10 years before reasoning maturity. And this is the image I use when I speak to the young people in my country. This fellow is trying to put on a power saw and he's holding it between his legs. And that is what a teenager looks like trying to make decisions about sexual intercourse. They will inevitably make the wrong choices. Now, when it comes to abortion, as legislators, it's very important you understand that the term abortion simply means bring to an end prematurely. And for us in medicine, you must qualify it and call it either induced, spontaneous, or something. The term abortion on its own is just a mid-English word. We can abort this meeting, for instance, meaning we bring it to an end prematurely. Now, it is a scientific fact that life begins at fertilization. We don't need to debate that. And in medicine, when you deliberately terminate a pregnancy, knowing fully well the baby will die, or using a method that would kill the baby, that procedure is called induced abortion. And it is always medically unethical because we are trained to save life, not to destroy life. Now, if you understand that, then you'll understand that both safe and unsafe abortion aim to deliberately kill the unborn child. Safe abortion is supposedly done by somebody who is trained in a clean environment, and so they kill the baby in a clean environment. Unsafe abortion is done by somebody who is not trained or in an environment that is not conducive. But both of them aim to deliberately kill the unborn child. Now, what then that means from a medical perspective is that both safe and unsafe abortion are medically unethical. So you cannot come and give us safe abortion as the alternative for safe and unsafe abortion. Now, there is the chicken and egg dilemma, deception. Those of you who have learned biology were taught the life cycle. I've chosen the life cycle of the chicken. You are taught the life cycle of a mosquito, the life cycle of something else. And you are taught that it starts with an adult female that then lays an egg. And then that egg becomes a young one. And then the young one grows into maturity. All the life cycles we were taught in biology start with an adult female. Do you remember? Now, if you have been a chicken farmer, you know that if you have a chicken that is laying eggs without a hen, you will never get chicks. Is that true? So this life cycle is wrong. How come that is what we have always been taught? You have been deceived for so long. It's not just your land they took away in colonialism. They took away a lot more. Your capacity to think critically. So, the cock is missing. Why would anybody remove the cock from the life cycle and teach it to us as reproductive health? There are two important things. One of them is that you can remove God from the discussion of science. Because if you believe that the male and the female were both there at the beginning as full-grown adults, before they could get the first offspring to begin the cycle of that species, then you must ask the question, where did they come from? And you will inevitably come to the understanding that there must be an almighty God of all creation. The second thing that is also important is that it justifies the false race theory. And I hope that our document will not have the word race. Race is a lie. If there was one man and one woman at the beginning of the human race, then we are all the same animal of different colors. Just like you can have a cow that is Frisian and a cow that is a Jersey, is the same thing. You have human beings of the different skin colors. And the only scientific evidence you need to determine that we only have one species of human being is that we can reproduce with everybody of whatever color. All right? So God created the human being brown like me. And if you take the lightest of the brown people, you will eventually get a light-skinned person. And if you take the darkest of the family, then you will eventually get the Sudanese. But they are all the same animal. What is the other thing that removes, once you remove daddy from the picture of reproduction, you make men come out of reproduction and they are no longer interested, and this is what happens. 90% of children who have run away from home have a problem with their fathers. 85% of children with behavioral disorders, including same-sex attraction, have a problem with their father. 85% of children in prison, both boys and girls, have a problem with the father. The minute you remove man from the family, you destroy everything. The abuse that then comes to children from the absence of men or men not doing their work properly is emotional and psychological abuse of children. And this is what mainly leads to same-sex attraction, rejection of biological sex. And we don't have enough time for me to explain all that, but I'd like you to understand that transgender is really rejection of biological sex. And we are told that the person has rejected the sex that they were assigned at birth. And it is important that you understand that when a baby is born, because I'm a gynecologist, I do not assign the sex of the baby. I look between the legs, I make an announcement of a scientific observation, this is a boy, this is a girl. Is it me who made the baby a boy or a girl? Did I assign the sex? I only recorded a biological fact. Now, if one rejects their biological sex, they are out of touch with reality. And I want you to keep that at the back of your mind. As we discuss same-sex attraction that is commonly called homosexuality. So I don't use the term transgender, I don't use the term homosexuality. It is better we describe what we are saying so that we speak the same language. One has rejected the biological sex, this one has same-sex attraction, isn't it? Now, if one was to perceive a person of the same sex as a potential mate, as one with whom they can reproduce, that person is out of touch with reality. Is that true? Yes. It is also a scientific fact that the mouth and the anus are part of the digestive system. They are not part of the reproductive system. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? Now, being out of touch with reality in medicine is called delusion. So if I come here and I tell you I'm the Honorable President Museveni of Uganda and I don't like the way you people are behaving, would you stand up and clap and tell me, Karibu President? You would tell me Emmanuel, isn't it? Or you call my family and tell them, take care of doctor, he's not doing well, isn't it? How come if I stand here and tell you I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, you're supposed to clap? You're supposed to do the same thing. Call my family and tell them something is wrong, isn't it? Yes. So being delusion is a symptom of a very serious mental health disorder. So it is true homosexuality and transgenderism are not mental health problems, but they are symptoms of very serious mental health problems. And usually if you take a good history and you focus on childhood trauma, usually you would be able to find what happened to that child. Now you have heard about SOGI and this sexual orientation and gender identity things. I want to put it to you that there is nothing like an LGBTQ person. Don't accept this language. It's going to get you into trouble making policies and laws. There is nothing like an LGBTQ person. What we have is a person who has same-sex attraction, who is experiencing same-sex attraction, or who is rejecting their biological sex. And those are conditions, they are not personhoods. So the correct term is, there is a person who is living with same-sex attraction, and there is a person who is living with rejection of their biological sex. The key is they are persons first with a condition. Are we together? If you understand it this way, you will not have problems making your laws. Now, your children and us come across such pictures. These are two men and one of them is pregnant. So how is this possible? So a female can have healthy breasts surgically removed, receive male hormones, and grow facial hairs, even look like a man, and then be referred to as a transgender man, but in reality, she remains a delusional female with severe mutilation. If you look closely at the pregnant man, you'll see breasts. So they are given female hormones, they grow a beard, male hormones, they grow a beard, but she still has a uterus, and she has sex normally, and is able to conceive. And then when they put the picture in the web, then our children get very confused. All right? Yes, she's a woman. Now this beautiful something is Lieke Valerie. She's the one who won the Miss Universe in Netherlands, but Nick Valerie is a man. So a man can have his genitals removed, receive implants that resemble breasts, and is given female hormones. They can look feminine, and they can even be called a transgender woman. But in reality, they are a delusional man who is severely mutilated. Now, persons living with delusion need our love and encouragement to help them understand why they are feeling as they do so that they can seek healing. And we have a pastor here who has a book written, Why Are You Gay? It is a good question to ask. Why do you feel the way you're feeling? Because it is not normal. And if we could address why you're feeling the way you're feeling, we may be able to resolve the issue. But affirming delusion is extremely cruel. To allow them to continue living that lie is very, very cruel, and Africa should not take part in that. Now, if one believes that same-sex attraction or rejecting biological sex is normal, so if you are here and you believe that it is normal, you too suffer from a psychological condition called cognitive dissonance. You are believing two different things that contradict, and you need help. Now, as I come to a close, maybe if we taught our children the proper life cycle, we may make a difference. Based on Ubuntu, in the beginning there was God, and God created the whole of the universe before he created the human being, and he created them male and female. And he gave them the gift of marriage. Is a spiritual gift that brings them together in union for the purpose of procreation, that they could be fruitful and that they could bear children, and that they would bring up those children in a unit called the family, where children learn something different from daddy and something different from mommy, and they watch and learn. 80% of what they learn is by observation. It is the many families that form the community. The community is not made up of individuals. And it is from that community that we get the next couple that continues the human life cycle. And because we believe in God, we know that we are spiritual beings. Some souls will find their way back to the Father, depending on how they live. And some souls shall be sent away from the Father. It is very important that our children understand our existence, starting with the Almighty God of all creation, and that we are created male and female for a purpose, and that marriage is an essential part of our sexuality, because a human child requires 18 to 24 years before they can be independent of their parents. So what are our recommendations? That African legislators will call for an abolition of gain-of-function research. This is the only way we can stop the pandemics. The witches must stop producing new viruses. African legislators shall ensure that the healthcare interventions that are based on and respect parental authority and medical ethics. That there is nothing your government will do for health that doesn't respect parental authority or medical ethics. That African legislators shall make sure that international organizations retain a purely advisory role, and that they shall never oppress dissenting opinion. They shall respect African values, the centrality of the natural family as a primary unit of society, and respect for national sovereignty. That African legislators shall ensure sufficient budgetary allocation for health, including for collecting local health data. It's very embarrassing when you ask about how many people have died of malaria in your country, and it is the UN or CDC that gives you results. There should be also be money put aside for research, for locally available treatment options. And finally, I call on you to consider teaching our children the authentic human life cycle. Thank you very much.
Dr. Wahome deserves a standing ovation. Thank you very much. We'll have a brief intervention, then we'll break off for lunch. Moderator, please.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Wahome. Can you give him one more round of applause, please? I have to say this. Last year, I attended this program, and his presentation actually gave me a lot of information to rethink about WHO and the vaccines he spoke about the last time. And today also, we have heard from his presentation a lot of facts that African legislators should definitely look at and see how best we can work towards African sovereignty in the area of health. I think that is important. So without wasting much time, we have people who wanted to intervene and they wanted to make some presentation. We don't have time, but actually we'll give you each at least 2.5 minutes to do a presentation. At most 3 minutes for us to complete, okay? Yeah, so I first have to call the guy from Burkina Faso who was on my list. Earlier I said he was going to present, but actually he wanted to intervene on the charter. So Honorable Ami Yopion Som from Burkina Faso, you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci au modérateur pour la parole. Permettez-nous, venant du pays des hommes intègres, le Burkina Faso, encore de dire merci à l'honorable Sarah pour nous avoir associés à cette conférence. Nous avions traversé l'autre corne pratiquement de l'Afrique pour être ici, parce que ces thèmes nous intéressent à plus d'un titre. Comme vous le savez, partout où on parlera de souveraineté, nous serons présents. Le Burkina aujourd'hui est en pleine révolution pour la vraie souveraineté au prix du sang du peuple burkinabé.
But with the sovereignty, in general terms, everything we are dropping, it's because we know that we didn't have sovereignty, so we cannot have sovereignty, and a lot of things are imposed on us because of that. So it was shown earlier by the Honorable from Kenya. It's not our crisis. It is something that is being imposed on us, and just like several other, like Thomas Sankara said, and we need to face, and this slave will face issues alone if they have illusions regarding what they believe. So African people, just like His Excellency was saying yesterday, we need to fight so that we have our real independence in all areas. So it's a serious duty for me to be here before you to talk about a critical issue for our common future, which is health sovereignty. In a context, just like I've just said, for Burkina Faso, which is going through a crisis related to terrorism, or just like he said, in Burkina Faso facing these terrorists, just like it has already been said, there is silence on the African continent, just like the predecessor said from Congo. When it's happening in Congo, Africans will say, well, it's not my business, and with time it is affecting Africa. So we don't have to lose sight of this fight for health sovereignty. Just like Thomas Sankara would say, that people in good health is people who are awake. In order to fight, in order to gain everything you need, you have to be in good health. For example, if people are not in good health, I don't know what can you do, whether economically it will be people who are not productive. So I think that this has to guide the action of the whole continent. And all people have the right to health, but what are we doing so that this right becomes a reality? Of course, much as we are in a crisis where there are fights, there must be health. So today, when you look at Africa, one of the big problems in the health sector is especially malaria, which is killing today more than the arms. So, but what are we doing in Africa? Of course, about 2 weeks ago, parliamentarians we were in Accra within the framework of the Coalition of Parliamentarians for Malaria Education in Africa. Mama Malaria from Uganda, Mama Malaria from Uganda is there. And we said that Africa, it is an African problem, and that Africa has to look for means to eradicate, which is possible, of course. The last country to eradicate was Cape Verde. So in malaria, if we don't eradicate it, we are going to always find it as one of the pathologies that are causing a lot of money today. COVID-19 here told us that once the borders are closed, African countries and our health systems become very vulnerable, like I would say, because whether it's about medicine, everything comes from outside. Everything comes to us from outside. And to talk about vaccines, just like Doctor has just presented, today there is a crisis of confidence amongst ourselves in Africa for vaccines, because we had the COVID pandemic where they're giving us vaccines. After that, there were a lot of issues regarding vaccines. If we can work together in Africa to develop whether our own medicines or vaccines, vous n'avez pas plus de temps, honorable. Just a minute. So, for us African countries, we need to be able to allocate the Abuja declaration was telling us that we need to allocate 50% of our budget to health. But there are many countries today who have not been who have done it. Just like I said, we need to be able to eradicate malaria. So in Burkina Faso, for example, just like today, we have measures we have taken, especially having free access to health care for pregnant women and children of less than 5 years. And we need to be able to strengthen the fight against malaria through internal mobilization of resources. Thank you so much for your attention. We are going to try to respect time.
Just to say that we will be very much strict with the time, at least 3 minutes at most, you should be able to do your presentation. Just summarize it. Can we have Varai Hobart from Institute of Women Health, USA? Okay. Can we have Sahab Kalisa from Mohammed from South Africa, Africa Sovereignty Coalition?
Greetings from South Africa, and thank you to the conference organizers, and acknowledgement of both our ancestors, our children, and all dignitaries present at this conference. Let me acknowledge the excellent work of Dr. Wahome Ingayo, Director of African Sovereignty Coalition, Kenya, and share that I am an activist, journalist, and lawyer, and come with those quoted to share a few comments and perspectives on what has been presented today. And they are the following, that I completely agree on gain of function being abolished. We do have a draft of a moratorium against gain of function through the African Sovereignty Coalition South Africa, which we would be willing to share with all delegates at the conference. Secondly, that Pfizer tried to sign contracts with our countries in which they wanted as security for their injection products for COVID-19, our country's military bases, embassies, and reserve banks. So neocolonialism is taking a different form through the pharmaceutical military-industrial complex. On the subject of those who experience the LGBTIQ tendencies, through the spirit of Ubuntu, I would like to recommend that we offer them counseling and education. If we do not given that we have the largest youth population in the world, we run the risk of losing them to neocolonial agendas and those who seek to enforce regime change in our countries. So it is important for us to include mental health as part of the health discussions that we are having today. I also want to contribute that allopathic and Western medicine largely is a symptom of colonization. Our health as Africans is in traditional health. It is in natural health, and it is in our herbs. Every disease you can think of, we have the medicines here in Africa and in the global south. Cancer, respiratory, HIV, TB, malaria, we have it here in Africa, so we have no need to depend on foreign and corporate interests. And finally, let me add to the document in terms of the charter to say that compensation for injuries that have been caused through the pharmaceutical military industrial complex must be pursued by our government representatives. We want reparations for the harms that have been caused to our people. And the African Sovereignty Coalition is going to be driving the Africa VAERS reporting system. We have no coherent system on the African continent for reporting injuries from these pharmaceutical military industrial complex products. So we have developed the Africa VAERS reporting system with a system for each one of our African countries, and we would be happy to engage on how to coordinate that system. Last two comments, bearing time constraints, is to share that through our partners at the World Council for Health, we have developed a legal brief on preventing the abuse of states of emergency. There are international law criteria that governments have to meet before you can declare a state of emergency. And I would be very happy to share that document with you to avoid us being colonized again when next they declare a pandemic or a lockdown. And finally, to share that the United Nations is seeking standing of authority over what it calls 12 different types of emergencies, including pandemics, wars, artificial intelligence gone rogue, etc. This is the one world government. And we as Africans united in our sovereignty must resist that United Nations agenda to create a one world government under which our sovereignty would be lost. One Africa, one people, one nation. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you so very much. Can we have Sabelo Sabinda, International Alliance for Law Activists from South Africa?
All protocol observed. Thank you very much. As indicated, I'm a law activist, and being a law activist, I'm also a member of the African Coalition, African Sovereignty Coalition, that is. I will address myself on this aspect of health, starting firstly with the preamble to the proposed charter, where we've got there that the parliamentarians say convinced that we as parliamentarians, who are the representatives of the collective will of the African people, we need to incorporate there the necessity and the importance of the fact that this collective will of the people is being represented with the public participation of African people. Because the tendency is for parliamentarians to get into parliament and forget the collective will of the people and take decisions which are contrary to the interests of the people whilst closing out the space to ensure that the people cannot participate. And at the same time, I would like to problematize the use of the word, the custodians of our sovereignty. You are protectors of our sovereignty. We as an African people are the custodians of that which entails African sovereignty. I will talk particularly now to the part of the charter that speaks to our health. Firstly, consistent through the proposed draft is the word should. I propose that we make it stronger. Say shall. So when we say African legislatures should strive, we say they shall strive to protect and preserve Africa's sovereignty over Africa's health. Not just the health systems, but the health itself. Because you cannot talk about protecting a system without protecting that which the system aims to represent, which is the health of African people. And now, when you look at 1A of the draft, where we talk about measures to exercise and assert control over Africa's health, we're not necessarily talking about control, because control can be abused if it is not properly regulated. On the contrary, we're looking at how we exercise basically the preservation of our African health systems. Because we've seen it, we saw it during the so-called COVID, and I will maintain that it is so-called COVID because it was a so-called pandemic, which our African parliaments just took hook, line, and sinker without challenging how it is that for this thing to be called a pandemic in the first place, a foundation had been laid when the World Health Organization changed the definition of a pandemic. Under the original and clear definition of pandemic, that thing would not have qualified as a pandemic, just like the future ones that they are planning. C, we say here, we want to adopt measures to dedicate resources into research and development of vaccines. Why have we as African people gotten ourselves into a position where we are now fixated about vaccines? Our document on African sovereignty over our health talks about vaccination, talks about vaccines. I love the way Dr. Ngare put it when he says locally available treatment options. I propose that we there say dedicate resources into research and the development of locally available treatment options, including but not limited to known indigenous African traditional medicine. And then we've got there, if we look at F, formulate policies to strengthen, I think that word was supposed to read strengthen, primary care systems, including but not limited to the provision of preventative care, community-based services, and highly trained workforce. And then we look at number 2. African legislatures shall ensure that their governments, number A is okay, go to B, minimize reliance on foreign medical supplies by investing in the production of locally available treatment options. We don't have to take the pharmaceutical route. Allopathy is not necessarily the answer to our African situation. Africa is the least injected continent, and I do not accept that what was being injected into people is a vaccine. For that reason, I will not say we are the least vaccinated. We are the least injected. Yet, our survival rate is the highest compared to any other nation in the world. That shows that we did something right. Why are we now seeking to run away from that which we did right and want to find other people's ways which are wrong? Yesterday, the gentleman who spoke, I think his name was Hank, who said that Africa is last man standing for Africa and for humanity. Why is it? I ask you as parliamentarians particularly, why is it that if we are the last man standing, we are being led and guided by those who have fallen. Where are you taking us? Where are you leading us? Why have we voted you into power if then you betray us? It is an absolute betrayal if you will not interrogate these documents which purport to be law for the interests of African people, and you leave us out of the equation. Whilst we can advise you, we can help you, we can debate these issues with you and ensure that the African people are protected, ensure that the will.
Thank you. On the issue of the pandemic treaty, we can actually lose true sovereignty if we choose to sign or to ratify this treaty. I hope you know, there are some countries on the African continent that, unfortunately, the moment the treaty is signed, it directly becomes law automatically. Some countries are not like Uganda, where there would be a certain process to be taken for ratification. Now imagine for such countries, if they have a minister sitting in a certain room and unfortunately they append the signature onto the pandemic treaty without testing the truth within the pandemic treaty, they would have sold the whole nation. So I agree with all those who have stated that it is actually important that we create laws within our countries that would promote the idea of consultation on every convention that is brought up around health, every health convention, so that the likes of Dr. Wahome can come up and speak and show their expertise or test the credibility of that particular treaty or that particular convention that is being rooted for. So that people like you and me, or maybe even those who are not in parliament or are unable probably to get into such a space, can still give their particular voice or give the idea on how they want a certain direction to be taken, or if they actually want to enter a certain treaty.
Thank you, Solomon. I have
Lastly, just like we see the United States withdrawing from the World Health Organization, I think it is time for the African continent, truthfully, to start having a conversation on whether they should stay in the World Health Organization or withdraw from the World Health Organization. The time is now. Otherwise, if we continue being on tables where we are pressed on the wall and not given an opportunity to give direction on where we want to go, I worry that we may be in for a huge trap, and we do not want to get into that trap. So the time is now. May I request that when we go back to our countries, we start having these crucial and pertinent conversations on if we actually want to continue being part of these regional blocks like the World Health Organization that is actually global, where we do not have an opportunity to give our alternative.
Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so very much. All right. Thank you. So we will have to bring in our last presenter, Mr. Grigori. Can we have you at least for 2 minutes before we have Dr. Wahome react to your presentations, and then we close the session. Thank you.
Asante sana. My name is Greg Shea. I'm based in Nairobi. I'm here representing LifeSite News, which is the international leading voice for media and coverage of life, liberty, and the pursuit of true freedom. We focus on life issues, we focus on family, and we focus on many of the issues that you've been raising here today. And we're delighted to be here to capture some of your thoughts, impressions on the 3rd anniversary. This keeps growing each year. We were here last year. We see it doubled this year. And I like to think that we'll be able to witness it to continue to flourish and to arc in representing the spirit of Africa and asserting their values in line with the natural law for the benefit of all Africans, but dare I say, for the benefit of all humanity. And I commend you to your work, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Can we have Dr. Mohammed to react to your presentations? Dr. Mohammed, thank you.
Distinguished members of Parliament, I think we have said all that needs to be said. Last year we discussed the international health regulations in great detail. In their current state, regardless of what has been done, they will not serve the African continent and they will hurt our people. So like the other speakers have said, please go home and ask your governments not to sign the international health regulations or the new pandemic treaty. It is against the interests of Africa. And we have a new organization that can give us an alternative to WHO. And we'll be making this known. Don't fear to suggest even withdrawal from the WHO. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. I am sure most of you want to speak in this particular topic, but time is our biggest challenge. But we thank those of you who are able to present on the topic. Thank you so very much. See you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Gambia, for moderating this session. Right honorable speakers and honorable members, we need to break off for lunch. Remember, we have an excursion. So let's have lunch in 45 minutes so that we return and handle the afternoon session briefly, and then we can go and relax. Have a Ugandan treat this evening. So please, I hope all of you have been able to receive the coupons. But just something that I want to say. Members of Parliament do not sign these treaties. It is the executive. But it is our responsibility to actually ensure that whatever commitments the executive makes at continental level must be tabled in Parliament so that we scrutinize those engagements. We are the representatives of the people, and it is important that we raise these concerns. Like this treaty that has not been signed, it's important that we raise our concerns and the executive listens. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch, and please enjoy the African Ugandan meal, matoke with peanuts, and the sweet pineapples. No, I said 45 minutes from now. Thank you.